Well, hello, my little nightmare nuggets. Um, those actually sound really good. I kind of want to make some nightmare nuggets now. Not sure what they'd be made of, but when I figure out that recipe, I will let you know. And yes, you get a bonus episode this week. Bonus episode. So, as many of you may be aware, I used to do a true crime podcast, true crime slash horror slash paranormal. It was more true crime than anything. Podcast, Blackened Chicken Nightmare Nuggets. Yes, those sound delicious. Possibly in the shape of Cthulhu. I don't know. Still playing with that idea. Anyways, so I figure we kind of would just, for a bonus episode, because why not, revisit a little bit of true crime, shall we? Because I don't know if anyone is aware or has heard, there was some big news in the true crime community yesterday. Did anybody have breaking the Zodiac cipher on their 2020 bingo? Because I sure didn't, but that's exactly what happened yesterday. The cipher that was uncracked for 53 years was broken yesterday. It was conjoined teams of Americans, Belgians, and a bunch of code breakers finally broke the cipher that was the one that has not yet to be deciphered. Hi, Jeff. Thank you. I know. Thank you. I can't wait to get out of here. But yes, anyways, so there was no name, unfortunately. I think that's what everybody was hoping for, that he included his name in the cipher. But of course, the Zodiac being the Zodiac, the elusive shithead that he was, did not include that in there, basically just threw out there and said, and one guy had been people have been working on this cipher for years, trying to crack it. And they finally cracked it. And it basically said, ha ha ha, I can die now because I have plenty of slaves and it doesn't matter and blah, blah, blah. It's a whole bunch of bullshit. I'm glad they cracked it. It doesn't, unfortunately, give any clues to his identity, though. But so to celebrate the shift in true crime, why not we go revisit my old stomping grounds of a true crime episode? It's one of my favorite unsolved cases. We covered it on Spooky Show, but I will cover it here again for you, complete with a slideshow, because I love you guys like that. So, hello, Veronica. Hi. Thank you, everybody, for joining. So, today we're going to be covering the case, basically, that's called, how about we just get into it? How about we just get into it, shall we? All right, I'm going to do a share screen. Oh, we got some slides for you. So that's how this is going to work. So the case is basically the murder that no one saw. The strange case of the town of Skidmore versus Ken Rex McElroy. Is anybody familiar with this case? It has been covered in a couple documentaries, which I will list at the end if you guys are interested in further research or further looking into the case itself. But you know what? This week's special episode's tale is a sordid and twisted one. So let's dive right into it. You'll not be disappointed, you guys, I promise. It starts, or should we say ends, with a murder committed in broad daylight on the street of a small Midwestern town. At least 60 witnesses stood there that morning and watched Ken Rex McElroy die. And nobody saw a thing. Well, how is this possible, you ask? Well, to answer that question, we need to backtrack a little bit. Rewind from that muggy Friday morning almost 39 years ago, probably over 39 years ago now, when the heat fell in waves across the small town of Skidmore, Missouri, and the body of Ken Rex McElroy lay slumped and bloody against the steering wheel of his pickup truck. The story begins on June 1st, 1934, the day the victim was born, actually. He was born under a bad moon. To say he was born under a bad moon or an ill omen may have been quite the understatement. He was not a nice dude. He was the 15th of 16 children, born to migrant farmers Tony and Mabel McElroy. And he was already a familiar character to police in Nottoway County by the time he was 13, you guys. Already not starting off on a good foot. And by 15, when he was in the 8th grade, McElroy dropped out of school. Many accounts speak of his father being a cruel and heartless man who would, quote unquote, beat any sympathy out of Ken. And McElroy also suffered a fall from a hay wagon on the family farm as a young boy, which resulted in a serious head injury. A steel plate actually had to be implanted in his head. People theorize and speculate that it was maybe this head trauma that caused him to become the abominable monster and character that he eventually became. A lifelong career as a criminal began with small petty offenses. McElroy developed a reputation as a petty thief and a cattle rustler, while most of his peers were more concerned about driver's licenses and school dances. Over the years, he became increasingly brash and violent, tallying up a rap sheet that included more than 24 felony offenses, including assault, arson, burglary, grain theft, hog and cattle rustling, child molestation, and statutory rape. Again, not a great dude, not a nice person, not a role model. And for the course of 2 decades, this one man became the bully and the terror of Nottoway County and the town of Skidmore. That seemed a perfect time for a bourbon break. So he was a swarthy and intimidating figure who carried about 270 pounds on his over 6-foot frame. McElroy was as mean as he looked. But there was more than simple brute force behind those cruel, heavy-lidded blue eyes. Author of In Broad Daylight, a book about the incident in Skidmore, Harry McLean, said that McElroy, while not necessarily educated, was cunning. He knew which people, this is a direct quote from the book, quote, he knew which people to pick on, the weak people, and he followed through on his threats, and just often enough to make people believe that he was going to do what he said he was going to do. McElroy was a bully, you guys, plain and simple. And he was adept at playing the local justice like a cheap fiddle. He managed to evade prosecution and conviction when charges were brought against him, which they were a total of not once, not twice, but 21 times. He had a legendary status, McLean said of McElroy, and it all got to be bigger than he was. Somebody would hear his name and his legend would grow bigger. When he got off on a trial, it grew even bigger. It went beyond just hammering people and being mean-spirited. He neutralized an entire criminal justice system. End quote. And to say that was no exaggeration. Witnesses would often be intimidated into changing their minds or testimony before trials. McElroy often sat in his car outside the homes of potential witnesses and watched them day and night until they felt unsettled enough to drop the charges. And if a case did eventually make it to the trial phase, a juror might open their mailbox one day to find a rattlesnake in it. Nice dude. Champ. Top of the heap. Charges were often dropped for lack of witnesses and testimony. Weird how that happens. And even if there were those brave enough to confront McElroy in a court of law, his slick city attorney, Gene McFadden, seemed to get McElroy off every single time. It got so that the people in Skidmore were afraid to even raise their voices or look McElroy in the eye. Livestock owners would often look the other way when a few head would come up missing or if a few fuel barrels for farm equipment turned up a couple gallons later. It honestly wasn't worth the trouble that McElroy could cause them. One farmer, Romaine Henry, learned that particular lesson the hard way. In 1976, he actually attempted to chase McElroy off, who was trespassing on his property. So McElroy trespassing on Romaine Henry's property, right? Not where he's supposed to be. He is traipsing all over this guy's farm and he goes, "Hey, what the heck are you doing here? Get off my property." Do you think, oh, hey, SCPC Ghost. How do you think this gentleman responded? This not at all reasonable human being. Do you think he was like, "Oh, my bad, dude. Sorry, I didn't realize this was your property," and turned around and left? Do you think he apologized and went on his merry way? No. Romaine Henry received a couple rounds of buckshot to his stomach for the trouble. So tries to chase a man who's illegally on his property, off his property, which is his right to do as a property owner, and get shot for it. by the guy trespassing. Hi, Sean. The audacity. The absolute audacity. Like, I can't. Harry Potter and the audacity of this bitch. I cannot even. There's so many evens, it's odd. You guys. That is ballsy. I don't know what kind of balls that takes. Like, I'm in the wrong, but I'm going to shoot you for calling me out being wrong. Like, wow. Fortunately, Romaine Henry did survive the shooting, and you guessed it, McElroy got away with that one too. When he walked down the streets of Skidmore like the uncrowned thug king that he was, parents would steer clear their children of his cocky stride, especially their daughters. He was a notorious womanizer who had a vulgar taste for younger women and girls that got him in trouble with the law on more than one occasion. He was married at least 4 times and fathered 15 children. Yeesh. I mean, bad seed. Just bad seed. And bad juju all the way around with this one. His last wife, Trina McLeod, McElroy met when she was only 12. Ew. Disgusting. Yeah. I can't. He should never. So he met her when she was 12. Ew. I don't like this man. She got pregnant at 14. That is Trina there on the left. And went to live with McElroy's third wife, Alice Woods, who is the woman depicted on the right in this photo. McElroy quickly divorced Alice and married Trina to escape charges of statutory rape. Because, I mean, again, he's not a nice man, but he wasn't, I guess he was cunning. Like the guy said, he was cunning. He wasn't, So the reason he did that is because Trina was the only witness to the crime after all, and a wife cannot be compelled to testify against her husband in a court of law, no matter how disgusting and despicable he might be. Like I said, McElroy is crafty, not stupid. His abuse and violence didn't diminish at home either. He reportedly abused all of his wives. And when his last wife, Trina, gave birth to their first child, she reportedly fled back to her parents' home with McElroy's second wife, Alice, where they attempted to escape the home. Their freedom unfortunately, it did not last long. McElroy tracked the women down and brought them back home. And then, in a spiteful act of vengeance, he returned to Trina's parents' home and burned the house to the ground and shot the family dog. This guy sucks, you guys. Like, he's ticking all the this dude sucks hard boxes. Like, bully, criminal, thug, pedophile, shoots the dog, burns the house down. Like, he was just going through the checklist and just ticking all the boxes. So, and the dog, like, dude, really? You're already a walking pile of shit. Why? I guess needed a cherry on top of that shit sandwich. What kind of sandwich would have a cherry on it, you ask? A shitty one. That's what kind of sandwich. So fortunately, Trina's mother and stepfather weren't at home at the time, but it didn't really seem to matter to McElroy even if they had been. So I don't think the result would have been any different had they actually been home. I think he would have still burned the house down with them in it. Not a great dude. Really fucking terrible. That is an autopsy photo, by the way. So I'll leave that on the screen for just a second. Just because, I feel like this guy kind of got what was coming to him. Despite acts of violence like this, his wives did speak up on his behalf, claiming that McElroy treated them well, even defending his oppressive behavior after his death. Alice, his second wife, told People magazine, quote, "Ken was totally different from the way they're saying he was now. Oh, he was wild, but he wasn't guilty of all those things they say. He was honest and generous. I never knew him to steal anything, ever," unquote. That is brainwashing at its very best, let me tell you. Wow. Like, I don't think Jim Jones did a better job. Like, like that is some denial. easily said red flags all over the place. Trina would seem to agree with Alice when she claimed that the reason that Ken Rex was in trouble all the time wasn't because he was a criminal and a trash person. It was because the authorities were picking on him. You know, not because he's a garbage human. It's because the cops won't leave him alone. Because he's totally innocent. Just the cops will leave him alone. Like, girl, do you hear yourself? You don't love yourself, do you? She said, quote, the officers were always hassling him. They'd accuse him of anything, even things I knew he didn't do because I was with him. They hated him because he wouldn't kneel down to them, unquote. She even denied that McElroy had set fire to her parents' home, instead blaming the incident on faulty wiring. The women in his life undoubtedly also victims of McElroy's larger-than-life, manipulative, sociopathic personality. One of those things, unfortunately, where I'm sure lying about something and remembering things differently and covering up things were easier to mentally deal with than somebody punching you in the face multiple times. So I understand why they lied for him, but it's still disturbing to, yeah, exactly. And the dog shot it itself. Yeah, you know, it's like, I understand why these women lied, because they were so traumatized and they were so like battered and abused that they were used. It was easier to go along with what he said than to face his wrath. I get it. But at the same time, just ugh. So this is just background too, you guys. This is all background. We're not even to the crime yet. This is just the lead up. This is the nugget. This is the morsel. I'm about to give you the main course right now. So it seemed that the residents of Skidmore had gotten used to Ken Rex McElroy's boot across their neck. It wasn't that they liked it. It had come down to a matter of pure and unadulterated self-preservation. Calling the sheriff or reporting threats and crimes to the authorities seemed a risk that few were willing to take, knowing the consequences that possibly awaited. Retaliation would be swift and it would be severe. No, the town of Skidmore was reticent to their fate. They didn't like it, but they seemed to fit to endure it and to ride the storm out, just like they did with the violent twisters that would touch down out in the fields. Huddled in the storm cellar and keep your head down until the worst of it was over, until the storm blew itself out or moved on. That is, until the events of the evening of July 8th, 1980. The night that McElroy would unwittingly set in motion the circumstances of his own murder. So that July was a typical one. I'm going to pause it right there. Hot and stifling. But for the residents of Skidmore, something weighed on their minds much heavier than the weather. And it was what to do about the man who terrorized their town. The man who seemed untouchable by any willing court of law. That answer came in the quite unexpected form of this man in this photo right here, 70-year-old grocer Ernst Bo Bowenkamp. What set McElroy and Bowenkamp on a collision course was honestly a petty offense. In April, Trina told her husband that a clerk in the Bowenkamp small grocery store had accused their then 4-year-old daughter of stealing some candy. The clerk in question, Evelyn Sumi, was at the back of the store when the front doors swung open. You're about to meet Ken Rex McElroy, somebody warned her. McElroy stood silently at the back of the store while Trina laid into Sumi with an expletive-laced argument. The clerk tried to explain what had occurred, and then, in fact, no one had accused the children of stealing, to which Trina responded with, quote, "Why would my fucking daughter lie?" Real nice language in front of kids, by the way. Class act all the way around. Over stealing candy, you guys. This whole incident triggered because the kid was accused of stealing candy. Wow. Okay. Seems it's a reasonable and proportionate reaction is going to follow. Spoiler alert, it's not reasonable. It's very reactionary and it will follow. Let's get into that. So, the McElroys did eventually leave the store, but come closing time that night, Ken Rex had returned. He was waiting outside for the Bowenkamps. Bo the grocer, the owner of the store, refused to engage further with the town bully and simply went home with his wife, Lois, where that may have been the end of it for most normal folks, even those with a hot button trigger temper. It was only the beginning of a campaign of terror for McElroy. Quote, he showed back up in the front of their house that night, and he and Trina sat there and watched them, said Joyce Monty, the Bonecamp's daughter. That became the pattern. Once he even got out and fired a shotgun up into the pine tree by their house. Evelyn lived across the street, and he made sure that she could see them. He'd leave and then come back, unquote. So would sit there, fire a gun, basically just be an intimidating asshole out front of these people's house that had rightfully defended their business and honestly really didn't do anything wrong and refused to engage with this idiot. So for months, McElroy haunted the Bowencamps and their homes like a malignant poltergeist. But it wouldn't be there that McElroy would strike. It would be on an unexpected July evening while Bo, that's a tongue twister of a name, while Bo Bowencamp waited at the back loading dock of the store where he was anticipating an air conditioner repairman. It was there that McElroy shot the elderly grocer point blank, a deer slug tearing through his neck 3 inches from his head. Y'all, deer slugs are big. Buckshot is big. That is a big slug, and it is a solid slug. It is meant to kill deer, which are much larger than people. Holy Moses. Over candy, I'm going to remind you guys, over candy. This was all over a piece of candy. I can't. I cannot. So this man right here in this photo is a baller because he survived. Like, he got shot in the neck and lived. The law came swiftly for McElroy after that, but unfortunately it wouldn't last. Missouri State Highway Patrol Trooper Richard Stratton, I think, who is the next photo here. We'll pull it. Yep, that's him right there. The only lawman in Northwest Missouri who ever dared to stand up to McElroy hunted the assailant down and arrested him on a charge of attempted murder. McElroy only spent 1 night in jail before posting bond, sauntering back to the D&G Tavern and pool hall with a cocky and menacing stride that seemed to dare anyone with a mind for it to question his subsequent freedom. How is this man not in jail? Joyce Monty said, repeating the question that hung on countless citizens' lips when McElroy so boldly appeared the next morning after his release. His very presence was a challenge, but the bond was temporary, and McElroy still stood the very real possibility of actually serving time for this wanton act of violence. For months leading up to the trial, the Bowencamps and Sumi lived in virtual terror. They slept in shifts, family and friends keeping an eye on the streets on their behalf. Every breath taken was one taken under a very real veil of threat. McElroy was well known for threatening witnesses out of testifying against him, and everyone had already seen the violence he was capable of, well before the threat of incarceration and prison hung over his head. He already shot 2 people for daring to say boo to him. So the threat on these people was real, and it was palpable. They lived their lives every day in fear while this man walked out on the streets with impunity. How that's fair, I have no idea. I have no idea. The Bowencamps never knew where McElroy was. There were at times several days that they would go without seeing him. He would disappear for several days. And then they would suddenly see him every day for weeks. In this time, the Bowencamps developed their own network of informants who would let them know, fortunately it is a very small town, sending coded messages if McElroy was spotted in town. When McElroy fired a gun outside of Evelyn Sumi's home, she called Dave Dunbar, the town marshal, who I don't have a photo of. Dunbar spoke to him in perhaps an attempt to de-escalate the situation, and McElroy pulled a gun on him. So what was this man's response? What do you think this man of the law's response was? He just had a gun pulled on him by a criminal who's already shot 2 people, attempted to murder 2 people, has been harassing 4 or 5 people. Well, if your response was he clapped the cuffs on McElroy and took him to jail for threatening a police officer, wrong. Dunbar quit. The town marshal went, fuck this, out of my pay grade, goodbye, and walked. And walked out. Sumi took her complaint to the sheriff of Nottoway County, who seemed unmoved and unwilling to offer any assistance. The sheriff said, quote, if you have to shoot him, let us know and we'll come get him before he starts stinking, unquote. So basically, they were just given the, y'all can shoot him, it's fine, by the sheriff. They just gave the green light for vigilante justice, y'all. And let's see how that plays out. McElroy had paralyzed the county with fear, and the Bowenkamps refused to back down. Like, these people were baller, for sure. Like, these people were not here to play. They were like, nope, he is a menace. He's just terrorized this town for 20 years, and we're just not going to deal with it anymore. The final straw came the summer of the following year. A jury handed down McElroy's first ever felony conviction, though it came on the much lesser charge of second-degree assault rather than attempted murder. Even further, they recommended that he spend at least 2 years in prison. 2 years of relief and peace were within the grasp of the harangued citizens of Skidmore. But, sadly, it was not to be. McElroy subsequently sidestepped jail on an appeal bond and could remain free until he exhausted his appeals, free to taunt his victims and continue to terrorize them at his will, with the one fact that had become acutely clear. He would never see a day of prison. McElroy himself was quoted as saying, quote, the jury convicted me and they gave me 2 years, but I'll tell you what, I'll never go to jail. I'll appeal and get off. I've been fighting the law since I was 13, and I'm damn near 50. I've been arrested for over 53 felonies, and this is the first one I ever lost. Unquote. The swagger, the cockiness, the braggadocio. Ugh. I want to punch this man directly in his face and knock all of his teeth out of his stupid fudge nut. Like, I'm ready to throw hands with this guy. And I'm pretty sure he would have killed me, but I don't care. The next day, McElroy showed up at the D&G Tavern carrying a rifle with a bayonet, a clear violation of the terms of his bond, which I'm pretty sure if you've been out of jail, you are not allowed to carry a firearm around with or without a bayonet on it. Don't think that's part of a technicality, but whatever. He loudly threatened to finish off the Bowenkamps, and no one doubted him. It wasn't an empty threat. The last vestiges of their hope wound up in the system that had summarily failed them so many times before. Witnesses who had seen McElroy with the firearm gave the information that the county prosecutor required to start a bond revocation hearing. The townsfolk even organized a caravan to transport witnesses safely to the courthouse in order to testify against him. In a calculated slap to the collective faces of the town, McElroy's lawyer managed to get the hearing postponed. So they started the process. They've been following all of the steps to this point. So let's summarize where we've gotten here. They've followed the letter to the law. They've done all their due diligence, and they followed the steps that are required by the criminal justice system. He's been accused, arrested, has been indicted, going to be taken to court. They filed a bond revocation hearing because he had a gun, which was in clear violation of his bond. So they said, hey, we're doing our due diligence by the law. He had a gun. He's not allowed to have that. His bond needs revoked and he needs put in jail because he's loudly threatening to kill people while he's brandishing a gun. Please do something. And they're like, we'll even get people that saw him with this gun in the bar, because he did this in a bar, y'all, in a bar crowded with people. He wasn't the only one in the bar. There were other people there that were like, yep, we saw him walk in there with a rifle. the fucking bayonet on it like it was goddamn George Washington, tromped in there and was like, I'm going to kill everybody that says anything bad against me. And like, so there were witnesses to this incident, and they were like, we'll even make sure the witnesses are protected to get to court. Please take his bond away. Please take it away. He needs to go to jail. And his lawyer went, nah, fuck everyone in this town. Like, what? Wow. Just wow. Hello to everybody just joining. Sorry, that was me in the middle of a rant. Of a bourbon-fueled rant, y'all. So, as you can imagine, that was the last straw. This final failure of the justice system had become a clarion call to the citizens of Skidmore, a call that echoed to their collective souls. The law had failed them. They were completely on their own, and they had to watch out for each other. Dozens of Skidmore citizens gathered at the American Legion Hall the morning of July 10th, 1981. They asked newly elected Sheriff Danny Estes what could be legally done about McElroy. He attempted to appeal to the crowd's better angels of their nature and instructed the gathered citizens not to get into a confrontation with McElroy directly. I mean, it doesn't seem like a good idea to you. It doesn't seem like a good idea to me at all. The guy's walking around with a gun with a bayonet. Maybe not get in direct confrontation with this hothead. Just saying. So instead, he suggested that they seriously consider forming a neighborhood patrol or like a neighborhood watch or something like that. And then in a confusing, but not really confusing, turn of events, after suggesting that the town start a neighborhood watch, Estes left town. So the sheriff said, yeah, y'all shouldn't go confront him, maybe just start a neighborhood watch, but I'm going to roll out. Does that seem suspicious to y'all? Just throwing that out there. Estes left town, most likely passing McElroy's Silverado pickup truck in his cruiser as Trina and Ken Rex drove into town. Word quickly spread that McElroy was in town. A crowd walked from the Legion Hall down to the D&G Tavern where McElroy had positioned himself at his usual spot at the bar. So a small crowd walked out, got to the bar. Their demand was simple. Get out of town. You have to leave now. Get the fuck out. We don't care where you go, but you can't stay here. You need to leave. To hear it from Trina, who reported it to reporters after the incident, she claimed that a group of men followed them as McElroy finished his drinks and he and Trina left the tavern. He started the truck when sounds of gunfire jarringly shattered the heavy silence of the dreary summer day. A volley of shots shattered the back window of the truck cab, causing Trina to dive out of the vehicle on the passenger. She was on the passenger side, to dive out of the cab of the truck onto the pavement, where a couple of men standing in the crowd nearby picked her up and hustled her to a nearby bank out of the line of fire. And she was completely hysterical, of course, being shot at. Almost as soon as it had begun, the gunfire stopped. McElroy was slumped over the steering wheel, the back of his head blown off. He'd been struck a total of 4 times. Blood spattered in stark relief against the upholstery and the windshield. Nobody called for an ambulance. Everybody just went home. Do you think there was one guy showed up late while they're all standing around the truck, and he shows up late and he's like, oh my gosh, there was a shooting, I should call. And then everyone just looked at him, like really pointedly looked like, and he was like, I shouldn't call anyone. I'm just gonna go take my stuff and go home. Mind my business and get out of here. When Sheriff Estes and state troopers arrived in town, oddly enough, a little bit later, the streets were serene and oddly quiet, save for the sounds of the rumbling and smoking engine of McElroy's truck. His foot had fallen hard on the accelerator when he was shot, causing the engine to run at full speed. No one bothered to turn it off. Authorities found the shell casings from 2 different weapons, a .22 caliber Magnum rifle and an 8mm Mauser, a German World War I era long-range rifle. The guns were never recovered. A rumor in town claims that the guns in question were put into a van and discarded in Cheyenne, Wyoming, except for one. One of the murder weapons was thrown in a nearby river, according to that. So for the first time in 2 decades of terror, the streets of Skidmore were quiet. And the citizens seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. While 2 grand juries were convened, no indictments were ever handed down. It seemed that those who had witnessed and participated in the daytime execution of one of its cruelest citizens seemed unwilling to speak out against the others. Mob justice had ruled that morning, and the code of silence kept the vigilantes out of the reach of the law. Steve Boer, the director of the St. Joseph News Press in Ottawa County, said, quote, "And that's kind of what small towns do. They just kind of band together and do what's best for the town. In the aftermath of that, to use all the resources at your disposal. Well, in Skidmore, they're non-existent. No one in the town would ever give a name," unquote. One of the citizens who was in attendance that fateful morning recalled to People magazine after the shooting, quote, "We simply felt that the system had failed us. We all knew what McElroy was like, and there he was again and again. It seemed like nobody could stop him," unquote. Cheryl Bowenkamp, daughter of Lois and Bo Bowenkamp, said after the shooting that someone had opened the door of their grocery store and said, quote, "It's over. You can sleep tonight. Now just stand behind us," unquote. And she never said who said that. After a grand jury failed twice to indict anyone for wrongdoing, Trina enlisted the assistance of the FBI because, you know, she's still on her husband's side, I guess, for whatever reason, under the impression that Sheriff Danny Estes had abused his power and authorized a vigilante killing. Which, I mean, he did, maybe he did, I don't know. He didn't out loud. He did leave town. Who knows? The FBI investigated and found themselves just as stonewalled as any other authorities or journalists who came seeking a story in the small northwestern Missouri town. Estes always denied any involvement or role in the killing. Many citizens were called to testify before a grand jury, but none recalled seeing a shooter. No indictment came from the federal grand jury either. All findings from the FBI investigation, including a list of 3 names of witnesses who saw the shooter, supposedly, were handed over to County Prosecutor David Baird. He chose not to pursue charges due to a, quote, "lack of evidence to secure a conviction." Even to this day, nearly 40 years since the killing, the citizens of Skidmore refused to speak of who was ultimately responsible for McElroy's murder. Trina McElroy accused Skidmore resident and the man that's shown in this slide here and part owner of the D&G Tavern, Del Clement, of being the shooter. His name was the only one that was officially ever offered as a suspect in the killing, but he would never face any official charges. He died of liver disease in 2009, and on his memorial page, someone would recall him as a, quote, "good and brave man." Trina would sue the town after the killing and would eventually remarry and move away from Skidmore, refusing to speak of the case until her death in 2012. McElroy's house was burned down after his death, and the law in town harassed the McElroy children something bad. Some of McElroy's children claimed that after the shooting, people would drive by the family home and fire guns into it. They moved out of town not too long after, afraid for their lives. Many of them are still alive and remember their father in a very different light than the rest of the town of Skidmore, which, you know, being family, of course, you remember people probably in a better light than most people remember them as. The sheriff, who some say turned a blind eye to vigilante justice, is dead also. Danny Estes, I believe, died of cancer in, I think, late 90s or 2000s. But the question remains, was this the case of citizens taking the law into their own hands? Was this decided that day in the Legion Hall? Once word had gotten around to the crowd, frustrated with the repeated failures of the justice system, that McElroy was in town, did they then decide to put an end to him then and there? Was this premeditated? Some people say yes, while others seem to think that the act was more born of impulse and desperation rather than premeditation and malice. A decision that ultimately poses a moral dilemma to us even today. When, if ever, does a person like Ken Rex McElroy deserve to die? Is vigilante justice justified under certain circumstances? Is murder ever truly justified? One thing is for certain, though. Don't ask the citizens of Skidmore, Missouri, because nobody saw a thing. So that wraps that case up. However, if you're interested more about the case, please check out the 6-part docuseries of the same name on Sundance. I believe it's available on Amazon Prime as well, called No One Saw a Thing. Harry McLean's book, In Broad Daylight. Thank you to Patch.com and People Magazine for providing those quotes, those direct quotes and resources. The documentary provided a ton of resources as well. And here's the thing, guys. What's even weirder is the weird stuff in Skidmore didn't stop after that. People seem to think that this town now lives under some sort of weird Stephen King-like curse since the citizens basically agreed to this vigilante, this vigilante justice, and no one was punished for it. There have been 9 murders in this town since then, which is pretty off the charts for a town of like 400 people. There's about 400 people that live in Skidmore to like modern now, like to this day, like as of like a couple of years ago. There's been 9 murders and like 3 people gone missing, that's pretty high for a town in the middle of nowhere with only that number of citizens, with such a small citizenry. There's one that I'm showing here. Some people may be familiar with this case as well. It's probably the most famous case after the Kenrex McElroy case that came out of Skidmore, was the Lisa Montgomery case, where Lisa Montgomery targeted a woman online that was, I can't remember the victim's name, but she bred dogs. And she was pregnant at the time. And Lisa Montgomery made friends with this woman under the guise of, oh, I want to buy a puppy. I want to get one of your puppies. And she went over to this woman's house, which is the house that is pictured here. And Lisa was so desperate to have a baby that she attacked the woman in the home. That's Lisa Montgomery. She is still in prison. She is in prison for the rest of her life. And there's a very good reason why this woman is in prison for the rest of her life, because she attacked and murdered this woman and cut her stomach open and stole her baby. Yeah. Obviously the mother died. She did not make it. Her husband came home to find her dead, blood all over the house. The baby was missing. The baby was fine. The baby was recovered. Lisa was a woman obsessed with holding on to the man in her life by faking a pregnancy. So then she claimed that the baby was hers. She gave birth, all of a sudden, just suddenly gave birth, and she'd been wearing like pillows and stuff like that, faking a whole pregnancy. So to hide the fact that she'd been faking this pregnancy, she went and murdered a pregnant woman and stole a baby because she knew the gig was going to be up pretty soon. Her man was going to catch on to the fact that it's like, bitch, you've been pregnant for like 18 months. Like, where's the baby? So she is still in prison. That is probably the other most famous case to come out of Skidmore since the Kenrex McElroy. There are, like I said, 400 people living in this town to this day. It's pretty much almost honestly a ghost town in the middle of nowhere. The citizens are still refused to talk about it, the Kenrex McElroy thing, and there's people that have gone missing and it's never been seen. There's a guy that went missing in 2001, was just never seen again. He just vanished. That you can see the D&G Tavern. That's a picture of the truck. That's actually a photo of the crime scene there. That was the truck outside of the tavern. So that is a recap of one of my favorite unsolved crime cases. And thank you guys for sitting here and hanging out. Does anyone have any questions, any observations about it? What are your guys' theories about it? What do you think? Do you think that the citizens decided prior to this, they were like, fuck this guy, we're going to kill him? Or do you think it was they surrounded the truck and they were like, you know what? We're not going to get out of here. This isn't going to end. And they decided in that moment to shoot him? Or was this decided 20 minutes prior before they even walked into the bar? What do you guys think? I am here for your theories. And maybe who do you think did it? Who do you think did it? Who do you think was the shooter? there's a lot of angles in this one. There's a lot of like, did the sheriff leave on purpose? That's one that I always thought of. I always thought, like, I think the sheriff knew what was going down and he just got out of town and was like, you know what? If I don't see it, it didn't fucking happen. I'm out. Daniel says he thinks before they went to the bar. They were likely frustrated enough at this point where they may have very well decided that before they, you know, if they were at the meeting and they were like, listen, somebody's got to do something. Electric Pagan said, I think they all thought someone needed to do something about it and agreed that if anyone did anything that nobody would talk. I think so too. I think that was something that they discussed, and basically they knew where they were at the end of their rope, and it was kind of like a, well, if something happens, if we all surround the truck and somebody does fire a gun, we're all in agreement that no one saw shit, right? And it was just kind of like an unspoken. What's crazy is that most of the people, if like, I think 95% of the people, if not 99% of the people who were involved in this killing are dead now. They're dead now. Like, so even the people who were accused of being shooters, the sheriff at the time, I think Stratton might still be alive. Richard Stratton, the guy that arrested him originally. Bo Bowenkamp's dead. He was like 70 back then. He's dead. His children are still alive. His daughters are like in their 50s and 60s. But the people actually involved in this, Trina's dead. She died in 2012. Del Clement died in 2009. So everyone that was involved directly in this case or may have had involvement that could have been charged with something are dead at this point. But what's crazy is the town still won't talk about it. They could, at this point, say, yep, so-and-so did it. He's dead. There's nothing you can do about it. But they just, I don't think it's something anyone's ever going to know. And that's what gets me. I hate unsolved mysteries. I'm like, I think people are just going to take it to their grave on this one, honestly. They took it to the grave, literally took it to the grave. But yeah, there's been a crazy amount of other things that have happened, and people theorize that it's a theory that is this the son, you know, the sins of the father repaid on the sons, because the town banded together to do something so awful, even though you could argue that it was justified because of the person that it was committed against, because it went unpunished. Is that why there's a rash of strange disappearances and violent murders that have plagued this town since? It sounds like a Stephen King book, y'all. I'm just saying, it sounds like a plot for a Stephen King. Like, I mean, Stephen King does like writing about weird supernatural crap that happens in small towns in the middle of nowhere. So throwing that out there. Do you guys think that there's a connection, or do you guys think that it's just typical increases in violence over like the decades and things like that? Do you think there's a connection between not being punished for murdering somebody in broad daylight and having all these weird things happen in your town? It's a fascinating documentary. It's 6 parts if you guys have not seen it. It's very good. They do interview, and the citizens, some of the citizens they interview are old enough and do remember it happening and still live there. But they're like, nope. I think it's only a couple of them that are actually old enough, or they know of, they're the children of people who lived there at the time. They're like, yeah, my dad or my mom talked about it. And they're like, and they're mum, and not lips are sealed. Either the parents never told them. They're like, yeah, they never told me who did it. They were alive at the time. They just kind of, and a lot of, and this did have also a kind of a detrimental effect to the town as well, in that the town at the time had a decent amount of people living in it in the 80s, in the early 80s. And after the event, after it happened, the town started to shrink. People started to move away. I think because, you know, honestly, vigilantism can be a slippery slope. you kill one person for doing one thing, and yes, he was wrong, and yes, he was a terrible person, but what's to stop people from turning on each other, Purge style, whenever they just don't like each other? Because it's like, now you've seen what you're capable of. What's going to stop you from turning on anybody, or turning on somebody you think might have spilled the beans? So even people who saw it and maybe didn't agree with what happened, like, hey, that was wrong, we probably shouldn't have killed him, yes, he was a piece of shit, but we probably shouldn't have shot him. Would you feel comfortable living in a town like that? I don't think I would. Like, you know what I mean? They did make a movie about this, Ricky, with Jodan Baker, I think. No, not Jodan Baker. Who did they make a movie with it with? It was made back in the, let's see. It was made back in the 80s. It was made after the book, in broad daylight, with Brian Dennehy played Ken Rex McElroy. It was based on the book that I actually quoted earlier in the episode. Yeah, a lot of people did move because of that, because they felt like, well, what's to stop somebody from turning a gun on me now if they just don't like me, or if they think I said something, or if they think I squealed. A lot of people did move and never came back. Yeah, 1991. 1991, in broad daylight. I don't know if that movie's available, but it is. It's fictionalized. They don't call it. He doesn't go by the name Ken Rex McElroy. That they changed the character's name, but it's based on the case. For sure. They've not made a movie of it since, though. They've just made documentaries. Which is odd. You would think it would seem like, I'm like, that seems like prime Hollywood material. You think they would try to redo that, like, kind of like they remade Walking Tall, which was based on a true story. But, well, I don't think Ken Rex would have disappeared. I think he would have just kept going and just terrorized that town until no one lived in it except for him and his wives and children. I don't think he had an off switch. So, and I honestly, at that point, reading all the stuff I read on it, I didn't have a lot of faith in the justice system that he was ever going to go to jail. And even if he did, and here's the other thing, even if he did, let's just say for the sake of argument, let's just for fucks and funnies say that he did get convicted and he did get his bond revoked and he ended up in prison for 2 years. For 2 years only, by the way. It's not that long. How pissed would this guy be that he got sent to jail and y'all still live in this town? When he got out of prison, there was going to be hell to pay. Like, they thought it was bad with him just not even getting arrested. Imagine him, like, the wrath of him having to come back from prison. Oh no. That whole he would have just wiped out half that town. Electric Pagan says, and people be suspicious and paranoid. Yep. That's what a few people did say, that their parents had moved from Skidmore after the incident happened because they didn't agree with what had happened and they didn't feel comfortable in the town anymore. They didn't feel like they were safe. So they left. And basically now you have a town of like 400 people and the town is basically dying at this point. It's just one of those like small little Midwestern towns that's just slowly shrinking into nothingness. And its only famous things are 2 pretty gruesome murders. Those are its 2 only major exports: fists and guns and shooting people on the street in broad daylight. Yeah, Daniel, exactly. The town will be gone. If he came out of prison, he was threatening people before he'd ever gone to jail, and he'd never been to jail. I can't imagine the wrath of this man when he got out of prison. He would just he burned somebody's house down when he wasn't even sure they'd done anything. He would have burned the fucking whole town down. He would have just lit fire to the whole town and danced in the street while it burned, Nero style. So I feel like they were really between a rock and a hard place here, and they didn't have a whole lot of options, sadly. I think it was at a tipping point, and it was one of those something's got to give moments, and something had to give, and it did. It just did, with a few gunshots in the middle of the street, and everybody just went, no one saw that, right? All right, let's go. Yeah, Old West. It was very much like Old West, OK Corral kind of style for sure. I would love to go do paranormal investigations in this town because it looks creepy as heck. Like, it looks creepy. I'm down. I'm down to investigate anywhere, but I also love true crime, so that's why I kind of wanted to get on and like recap that episode that we did. Because I don't know if you guys had ever heard it or seen it, but I'm glad to share it with you. And the Zodiac news got me all hyped up about true crime again. So I was like, I miss my true crime roots. As I was, used to be a true crime researcher. That's what I used to do. True crime / paranormal researcher. But yeah. The next actual episode, is this one's like a bonus, like After Dark episode, because I wasn't sure how true crime was going to go over. I know that y'all are paranormal fans, but I'm so glad to see so many true crime fans here in the chat that are all about so I might do a toss off of these. If you guys want me to do more true crime episodes, I have done tons of research, probably more than a normal person should. So I can always throw a true crime one in here and there if you guys are interested in that. I've done a disturbing amount of serial killer research. So if you're interested in further episodes of true crime, I don't mind throwing one in there or two in there about or even just weird random events, like weird, like unexplained phenomena and stuff like that. But I'm glad to see a lot of true crime people in the chat. So the next episode will be Wednesday at the normal time. And that will be part 2 of Haunted History. So we're going to go visit 6 more haunted locations. Just because the holidays time is a hard time to get people lined up to do interviews because everyone's either busy or doing family stuff. So I might have to do some fill-in episodes if that's okay with you guys. As long as you guys are into it, then I'm into it as well. I am down. So yeah, we'll do another Haunted History one. Yeah, let us know. Okay. Well, let's see. Yeah, so we're going to do Haunted History on the next one. And then if we want to do another true crime one, you guys tell me what you want to do with true crime or phenomena you want me to cover. I've covered Area 51. I've covered cryptids. I've covered, alien encounters. I've covered serial killers. I've covered unusual, unexplained events. Yeah. Anything is fair game, honestly. Let me know in the comments what you want me to cover, and I will do it. Fortunately, a lot of it, I can use some of my old notes. My old notes won't go to waste. So that'll be fun. I've researched, extensively H.H. Holmes and a lot of my heart oddly enough lies with Victorian serial killers. So I'm, big fan of H.H. Holmes, Jack the Ripper. We did prior a whole episode on, oh God, why can I never remember his name? They just did a series on Sundance. It's on Sundance with, gosh, dang it. Now I need to look it up. Hold on. I can never remember. Dennis Nielsen. So it's called Des, I think. Let's see. No, he died in excruciating pain. Yeah, that really sucks. Womp womp. Let me watch me be real sad. David Tennant. Yeah. So David Tennant plays Dennis Nielsen in this new series called Des. It's on Sundance, the Sundance streaming if you don't have it. It comes with a 30-day free trial, you guys, so it's worth it just to sign up for it to watch Nobody Saw a Thing and to watch Des, the new miniseries on Dennis Nielsen, who was almost as twisted as Jeffrey Dahmer. Just British version. Oh, Edgar Cayce would be a good one. I thought about doing one on Aleister Crowley if people are into it. I it's actually going to be one of the haunted locations that I'm going to cover in the next episode, was his home in Scotland. Lots of weird shit happened there. So no, I've not. I've seen the Jack the Ripper theory, yes, that he came to New York City and was caught and put to death there. I've also seen the theory that him and H.H. Holmes were the same person. The timelines to me don't sync up. Just looking at the different, just with all the different research I've done, the timelines don't sync. I will say for sure that either he was either caught and put in prison for something else, or he died, committed suicide or died, because people, when they're doing that sort of behavior, when they're killing like that, they don't just stop. They only stop when they are stopped, which means that he was either caught for something else, not for murder, was caught for something else and put in prison and died in prison or whatever, or he committed suicide or died himself. And people don't just be like, the murder switch doesn't flip and then he just stops killing. It's not the way it works. H.H. Holmes, Dantex is the one that had the murder hotel. Yes. We had one of the rooms in Colorado was the H.H. Holmes themed room, the murder castle. Actually had a friend who, recorded some lines for us for that episode. And maybe if you guys want to hear them, I think I still have them. He played H.H. Holmes for us in the podcast, and I'd be glad to play the quotes he did for us. And then there was also something about the New Orleans axe murder. If the Axeman of New Orleans was Jack the Ripper, then that man was very, very old. Because that was in the 1920s, and like the last, I think, murder case of Jack the Ripper was like 1888 or 1890. So he would have been he would have been, unless he was like an immortal or something like that. There's no way they were the same person. The Axeman was in the 1920s. Also one of my favorite unsolved. Do you guys want to see one on the Axeman of New Orleans? That's probably my second favorite unsolved case. The Axeman had a flair for the dramatic and for axes. And not even his own axes. We'll get into that in a whole other episode. But yeah, the New Orleans one, the timelines definitely don't sync up there. There's like, he would have been way too old to perform any of those crimes. So that's 100% a different person. When New Orleans reopens after pandemic, which I was actually trying to get into some of those hotels down there, because a lot of the hotels in the French Quarter are very haunted. Yes, American Horror Story did a season with Coven, because it was set in New Orleans. Some of the houses are still standing and the neighborhoods are still there where the Axeman was going around and murdering people. So I would love to go on like an Axeman tour. If we get down there to do a paranormal investigation, I'm like, dude, I'm going to need a day just to go on an Axeman tour, please and thank you. Like, I'm going to go walk around and find the Axeman houses. Like the Ripper tour. Like, I need to do a Jack the Ripper tour for sure. When I get to London, like first thing, plane touches down, Ripper tour. Yeah, the Axeman. Yeah, he's had some flair. I will say that for sure. And they never caught him. The Cleveland Torso murders. That's another one. That's a very gruesome, unsolved murder. The Black Dahlia. Black Dahlia is probably my favorite. One of my, like, there's so many. But the Black Dahlia is an amazing case as well. It's one of those where it's like I hate unsolved things, but I love them at the same time, because it's like a little puzzle that I'm trying to open, like a little puzzle box, like a Rubik's Cube. And it's so frustrating because I can't do it. Oh my God. Travel to World Series serial killers? Yes, please. Yes, please. Although I will say, I do take issue with certain ones, and there's a show called Dark Tourist on Netflix, and you guys can watch it. I advise you watching it, actually. There's some really cool places that he goes to, because there's a whole genre of dark tourism where you go to places like the Suicide Forest in Japan. You go to places like the tsunami zone in Japan. There are places that you go to in Russia, like outside Chernobyl, that are still radioactive. So that's a whole like genre of dark tourism. And he goes on a serial killer tour in Milwaukee. That's Jeffrey Dahmer, who is my favorite serial killer. But it's weird. I have an issue with people who have like, hi, Jason. I have an issue with people who I don't want to say glorify, but they kind of like idolize. There were a bunch of fangirls, and that's the only way I can describe these people that were on this tour. They were like almost like crushing on Jeffrey Dahmer, which is really upsetting and disturbing. I'm like, what? No. Like, first of all, and it's like one of those where they're like, oh, he was so like, he was cute and I wanted to hug him. I'm like, bitch, first of all, you weren't in his target demographic. So yeah, you would have been fine. But are you serious right now? And then they were at outside of a club that was as a bar. It had been shut down since it's been closed for years. And they were doing dowsing rods to try to contact Jeffrey Dahmer's spirit. And I'm like, what is happening on this fucking tour? What is happening? Like, these are not people to crush on. These are not celebrity crushes. Like, the amount of women that when they came out with the Ted Bundy documentary on Netflix and the extremely, was it Murderous and Vile, the one with Zac Efron, the movie, and then the subsequent documentary, the amount of women that had like all of a sudden crushes on Ted Bundy was upsetting. I'm like, hang on. I was like, okay, you're serious. You're seriously crushing on this man who crushed women's skulls and chopped their heads off. Cool. Awesome. That's a pretty low bar. Not gonna lie. Like, how bad do men have to be in your life that you're crushing on a serial killer who would have murdered you? I don't have words. I don't have words for something like it's like, no, absolutely not. Yeah, like Jason is absolutely correct. Thank you so much, Jason. And you are welcome to come up here if you have time. I will throw you an invite if you would like. There is a huge difference between being curious about the dark side of humanity and the dark side of human nature and worshiping evil. Absolutely. I couldn't say that better myself. It's like they think they can fix him. I'm like, no, you can't fix. That's something primally wrong in someone's brain. There is no fixing that. And even if you've watched extensive interviews with Dahmer, like I have, he admits the fact that he's like, yes, I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how to stop it. I would try with alcohol. I would try numbing it with alcohol. I would try denying it, and it would always kind of the urge would take over. They describe it as like an urge. And he's honestly probably one of the most honest that I've ever seen interviewed. He's not one that like played games like Bundy decided he was, because most of them are narcissists too. So they decide that they're smarter than everybody and they want to play games with the authorities and do this little like back and forth. But Dahmer never did that. He was very direct and answer questions like, look, yeah, I know what I did was fucked. I just couldn't stop myself. And I was like, okay, like at least you're honest about it. I mean, it's still fucked up, but at least you're not trying to tap dance around the fact that you did what you did. Yeah, Bundy decided to blame it all on porn. And you know what the funniest part of that is when Bundy was like at the end, it was right before he was executed. And was being interviewed by that James Dobson, who was a pretty famous, I guess, like evangelical pastor at the time. And he said, oh, it was all pornography's fault. And that's why I murdered all those women, was because I watched porn. And Charles Manson heard that and basically said, "Bitch, please." Like, it's the funniest response I think I've ever heard in my life. Was like, he was like he did the, no, go sit down. Go sit down. Have a seat. Have a stadium of seats, bitch. No, we're not doing that today. Thank you. Have you noticed my Cobra Kai shirt? Cobra Kai, strike first. No mercy. Cobra Kai always. It was hilarious. Like, the incredulousness of, like, how bad does your excuse have to be for you to get called out by Charles Manson, for you to get Manson to go? No. Rude. Yeah, it's true. You can't really believe anything. That Jason makes a very good point. Because they are sociopaths and narcissists, they're very good at manipulation tactics, which is how they get their victims, right? That's the way they get people to buy into that and get close to them. So you can't really believe anything any of these people say. Even when they're being honest about it, they're using their words to manipulate in some way. So yeah, in some way, they all do that to different degrees, because it is part of the toolbox of a serial killer / psychopath, sociopath, narcissist. Oh yeah, Manson. I don't think Manson was nearly as crazy as he played it up that he was. He was crazy. Don't get me wrong. He was nuttier than squirrel shit. But he amped it up, I think, in front of people to, like, I think he wanted to ultimately stay in prison. He never wanted to leave prison in the first place. When they released him from prison before the murders, because he was in prison almost his whole life since he was like 13. He was in and out of juvie. He was in and out of prison his whole life. He was institutionalized and he never wanted to leave. And he even said to them before they paroled him, "Don't let me out. You shouldn't let me out. I'll just come back here." And he did. So I think he played up what he thought people wanted to see. Not that because he obviously was not sane. He was smart, but he was fine line between genius and insanity. That yeah, he definitely played up the crazy for sure to the parole board, so they wouldn't let him out ever. Not that was ever probably even on the table or ever going to happen, but I think he was just like, I'm gonna amp up the crazy and the whole swastika tattoo in the middle of the forehead to, like, you know, add a little bit of spice to the nuts. Like, we believe you, Charlie. You're crazy. You really don't have to act it. You don't have to ham it up. You don't have to be on right now. He did almost marry a fangirl at the end. And then it came out that she was like after his, like, she wanted to get his money or something. I don't know. Like, or his, it was basically for 15 minutes of fame kind of thing. Yeah, there's a difference between crazy, unable to comprehend reality, and crazy, willing to cast aside humanity, is what Jason said. Jason, you're real good at this. Like, you want to be on a true crime show with me? I think Jason should be on a true crime show with me. We should do a true crime podcast, Jason. Should make this happen. Yeah, she wanted his corpse for something, right? She wanted rights to the body so she could sell it or something. I don't remember. It was something weird and macabre, and I don't know. Yeah, Tamara says Manson's mother was at West Virginia Penitentiary, which we talked about in the Haunted History episode. Last week, we talked about that prison. His mom was in prison. Yeah, his mother was in prison, and he asked to be sent home there, but the warden said no. Yeah, she wanted to be able to claim his body to sell it, which they ended up doing anyway. As far as I remember, they ended up selling parts of it because there are like his dentures are at the Haunted Museum in Vegas. There's a portrait that's made with his crematory ashes that's at the Haunted Museum. His blood and his crematory ashes. It's like a portrait of his face. It was like, oh Okay, that's an interesting medium that I maybe would not have necessarily chosen, but okay. Kudos. I turned and I looked at it and I was like, okay, that's a little okay. Yes, he does have an obsession with Manson to the point that he purchased the evil dentures. Yes, it's like Deathbed, the bed that eats. Not joking. That's an actual movie. Google it. Look it up. Somebody wrote that shit. Zach does have an obsession with Manson. He has an obsession with serial killers in general, but Manson in particular. He did buy the La Bianca home. Not the home, not the Omen, not the actual, like, the Tate house, which is next to the Omen house, which you guys have seen before on New Reality and other things. I can become art if I can't be taxidermied in a bear. See? You guys are always thinking about me. But he purchased the La Bianca home, and it's now again up for sale, I guess. I don't know what I think he planned on turning it into like a museum or something, there were plans to do something with the La Bianca home where they were murdered. Leo and was it Rosemary LaBianca were murdered the night after Sharon Tate. He was originally had plans to do something with the house, and then nothing happened, and then pandemic happened, and now the house is back up for sale apparently. So did the prison destroy most of the artwork Manson made? Yes. They destroyed, I think, most of his artwork that he made, but this was something another artist did as I guess like a weird memorial piece. I don't know. I don't know. But there's a whole serial killer room at the Haunted Museum with like Richard Ramirez's shirt that he wore while he was in trial. There's a whole Ted Bundy like corner with Bundy's murder kit, actually. The actual murder kit that was recovered from his beetle, with the tape and the duffel bag and the fake glasses that he wore when he kidnapped his last victim, Kimberly Leach. Yeah, there's some Gacy stuff. A piece of John Wayne Gacy's brain is in a jar in there. It's an interesting room. Hey, paranormal resident, how are you? Yeah, they would have sold it off. I don't know, dude. We are talking about serial killers now because we did a true crime episode on this little spontaneous jaunt to the murder corner. And the reason I call it the murder corner, do you guys want to know why I call it the murder corner? I used to joke around when I worked in retail about murdering problem customers in the murder corner. And I had a murder corner at my work where we had no cameras. So, because I said one time, I was like, I'm going to kill that person. And they were like, well, you can't really, because there isn't everything on camera. And I went, not cookbooks. That's the murder corner. There's no camera over there. So I told my bookseller, I was like, if you ever hear me go, hey, I just heard about this new cookbook you should come check out, please don't stop me. Or come help me, because I'm about to commit a felony. So that was the murder corner. There's no cameras in the cookbook corner. To serve man, it's a cookbook. Yeah, if they were smart, they would have. Oh, John Wayne Gacy. Yeah, I didn't get to do Gacy on the podcast, so that's a one that I was planning on doing, and we just took a break. And I went on hiatus. So that was one we were planning on doing. Haven't gotten around to it, but Gacy, I've done a lot of research on that one. Did you guys actually know that 9 of his victims still are unidentified? Which I didn't know that. He had 33 victims that were buried under the house. 9 of them remain unidentified. I think they, since DNA, have identified 2. But up until a couple years ago, yeah, there were quite a few that were unidentified still. And that was a really good documentary. So if you guys haven't seen that, that's on Netflix, I think, too. I don't know if they've taken it off since, but that was also a very good documentary. The restroom, Javi, the restroom doesn't have a camera either, but the customers might be really suspicious. If I go, hey, come meet me in the bathroom. They might be like, no, I'm just going to leave. Yeah, so Gacy might be the next one. Also, fun fact, as much as I hate it, because I hate clowns, and you guys know how much I hate clowns, Disney Plus does have a lack of true crime documentaries, Jason. This is true. Unless you count, no, there aren't any. I was like, unless you count, no. It does have The Mandalorian, though, which is pretty entertaining. The clown makeup that Gacy wore, which he never wore to kill people in. That's a common misconception that he wore the clown makeup when he murdered people. He did not. He wore the clown makeup as Pogo, which was his alter ego when he would go entertain children for parties. But from what I have heard from experts in clown makeup, clownery, Hogwarts School of Clownery and Clownism, I don't know. Clown experts, clown scientists say that the makeup should never have points because it scares children. Like, and his makeup was pointed. Like, that's why clowns usually draw like the round ends on the mouth, because it's supposed to not be scary. Spoiler alert, it's still fucking scary. Doesn't matter. It's a clown face. It doesn't matter what you could draw, like all kinds of fucking parallelograms. I don't care which shapes you're drawing on there. It's still scary. But I guess anything pointy is extra scary to children or extra threatening. So that's why it's never supposed to have points, but his did. Yes, he had a side job entertaining children and was an upstanding member of the community. He owned, like, he was a alderman. He was an elected town official. He owned businesses. Like, he has surviving children. He has 2 living children. I hate clowns. Can you imagine being the child of a serial killer, like a child of John Wayne Gacy? Yikes. Or Charles Manson. Charles Manson had 3. I think one of his sons committed suicide. They are always upstanding. So was BTK. Just saying, BTK was an upstanding member of his community too. And then he also liked to bind, torture, kill women and dress in their underwear. So, you know, hey, those are always the ones you look out for. According to every documentary I've seen, you always look out for the church-going, the ones who are youth pastors, who are upstanding members of the community, because usually they have a box of severed penises under their bed. If True Crime TV has taught me nothing else, and it hasn't, it is that fact right there. Veronica, my husband accidentally clicked my profile and asked him, hey, did he immediately just like move the knives away from you? Like, honey, are you fine? Is everything okay? Just moves the knife block away from you. Yeah, no, that's my whole queue on Netflix. Fortunately, I have no one to question that lives with me to question anything that I watch. So, because otherwise they would be very disturbed. My whole Netflix queue, my Hulu queue, yeah, Disney Plus, obviously not so much, Jason. Except, yeah, most of the movies start out with a dead parent of some sort, so I guess that counts. They would just be like, I'm gonna go. Go home. I did kill them all. They're all under my bed. Shh. Parts of them, anyway. I do have a good evil laugh. I won't deny that. But yeah, exactly. When a person looks too good to be true, they generally are. That is very true. They overcompensate. So they're overcompensating for what they're doing over here because what they're doing on this side is so wrong and so vile and evil that they overcompensate to make themselves, I guess, like to cover up. So there's no hint or whiff of suspicion. My husband knew what he was getting into. He doesn't question. See, well, he's a good man then. Then he knows what he was getting into. He's down. He knows. He's down to clown. Ugh, clowns, no. I can't. No. When we get back to Tonopah, we should eventually get back there because there's a couple other things to investigate in Tonopah besides the cemetery, which is one of my favorite spots. I did mention that I was like, if we end up somehow that we can't stay at the Mizpah, which is the haunted hotel, and we end up staying at the Clown Motel, I said, you guys can stay at the Clown Motel. I will sleep in the cemetery next door because I refuse. I was like, I'll sleep in the car. I don't care. I'll roll out a bedroll on a grave and go to bed. Good night. I'm sleeping next to these corpses. I'll see you guys in the morning. Because fuck that place. It's disgusting. A, it's disgusting. And B, it's full of clowns. So no, absolutely not. And Jason, you told me it was gross. You were like, there were bed bugs and like it was just filthy and disgusting, and it was covered in clowns. So I was like, oh, a double whammy, even better. It's filthy and covered in clowns. Sign me up. Ugh, no, I would never. The only cool thing about that motel was that there were a whole bunch of feral cats that lived outside. And I spent the entire time while two of our co-hosts were inside the office buying like memorabilia. We were outside, A, checking out the graveyard, and then B, trying to chase the feral cats. If you burned it to the ground, Jason, do you know how many cockroaches would probably escape that place? Like, I'm pretty sure that's 90% of the structure of that building at this point are cockroaches and bed bugs. We just off into the desert. Is horrible. I didn't want to go into one of the rooms to find out if they're clean or dirty or not. And I'm like, I can't get past the decor on the outside. No. I was like, nope, I guess I'm sleeping in the dirt. That's what's happening. Like, I'm pretty sure there's load-bearing cockroaches. Just throwing that out there. Just saying. Like, no. Ew. I don't know how I got off on this clown tangent because I hate clowns, you guys. I hate them. I really hate them. But yeah, true crime is my jam. People would be very concerned if they looked at my queue of Netflix and Hulu. They'd be like, it's cartoons and murderers. What are you trying to say to us here? What kind of individual are you? Someone who likes cartoons and serial killers. I don't know what to tell you. Don't die mad. Die mad. Sorry. I like cartoons and serial killers. So sue me. A weekly series. We were going to try to do a weekly series with Spooky Show, but it's tough with making schedules happen. But if I'm just going to do it solo, it would be easier to do. So if you guys are interested in seeing a weekly series now, quick temperature check of the room. Would you guys be interested in seeing it under Dead Hours, or would you want to see it under another name? Because I mean, like, yeah, Dead Hours is pretty blanket, where it could be other things besides paranormal. I mean, of course, it would mostly be paranormal still, but if you guys want to see, excuse me, rude. If you guys want to see more true crime stuff, I can do that. Dead Hours. Could definitely do that. Depending on how things go, I really like doing videos with or content with actors as well. So I like to have professional actors playing parts of either serial killers or victims or whatever when I don't have audio for them. So for example, my friend Mike did H.H. Holmes for us in the H.H. Holmes episode. My friend Chris played the Zodiac killer in our Zodiac episode. I was thinking, if things don't pick up and if things, just pick another day. Yeah, I could just do Murder Corner on another day other than Wednesday. Just pick a different day. But I was thinking it would be kind of an ambitious project to do, but doing a radio drama kind of, sort of you guys are familiar with like radio dramas in the 30s and stuff like that, and how like before there was television, they would have people like doing a radio drama where they would read parts, and like everyone would have a different like a play but on the radio. I thought about adapting the Black Dahlia with actors that I know here in town that are currently out of work because everything has been canceled. Plays have been canceled, shows have been canceled. Getting some of them to read parts for me, doing the Black Dahlia case, where the Black Dahlia case presented as a radio drama. Like complete with 30s slang and lingo. So think LA Confidential, like the movie, but as a radio drama. That's the best parallel that I can draw. Or like the game LA Noire as a radio drama. Fast talking, high trousers. Supposing I call you a lunkhead. Well, I ain't much of a supposing. Maybe I'll fix the star figuring. And everybody will talk like that. Everybody will talk like they did in the 20s and 30s. They would do it better than me because they're actually professional actors and not me being ridiculous. Hello. I mean, fair play. I'm pretty ridiculous. Spoiler alert. I'm pretty ridiculous, you guys. But thank you for hanging out with my ridiculous self. Thank you for hanging out with me and discussing true crime. I will think about a different day to do the Murder Corner on and do like a separate true crime venture of the Dead Hours on a different day. I'll decide what day we'll do it on, and then start a weekly series of true crime / unexplained events. If you guys want to, like I said, if you guys want to see stuff about UFOs aren't 100% my jam, but I'll research it and I'll do it. If you want to see like, cryptids, I do love cryptids. Mothman, he's a moth and a man. Mothman. Anything like that, if you're like interested in just general like supernatural or unknown things. Aw, thanks, guys. Veronica, we love anything you do. I'm kind of a mess, so I appreciate you. It'll be like drunk history, you guys, but with me telling you about serial killers while I drink. What do you think of that? I mean, Drunk History is an awesome show anyway. I think they just ended it, actually. But I'll sit here and drink bourbon and talk about true crime and history. 2020's got us all a mess. That is for true. But I will. Skinwalker, yeah, Skinwalker Ranch, dude. I'd love to get to Skinwalker Ranch for sure. That's on the list. That's on the list of places for sure. I don't know if that's even a possibility to be able to get out to a place like that, but Drunk Ghost Stories. That would be a good one. That would be a good one to have guests on, I think. Like to have like people come on, pre-game, and then come on and tell like either scary stories or like a ghost story you've experienced, a paranormal thing that you've experienced, or if you've encountered a UFO or something like that. Like that would be fun. I think that would be a fun one. Yeah, Skinwalker Ranch is nuts. I've heard of, and apparently this is a thing within the witchy community lately with baby witches, the same baby witches that tried to like hex the moon or something. I don't know what they were doing. Honey, I don't know. They confuse me and they hurt my head. But apparently some of these like younger practitioners and practitioners that are seeking out guides and patrons are trying to get Wendigos and Skinwalkers to be their patrons. No. No, and that's not like, honestly, like, guys, that's not me gatekeeping, because I would never. And you can have whoever you want as a patron or as like somebody that you call to for magical inspiration or for power. But calling on a Wendigo, and no, that's just dangerous. No. This isn't gatekeeping. This is just me being concerned for your safety. Are you okay? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. They'd be like calling on a werewolf. No, why would you do that? It's gonna rip you to pieces. Like, you're gonna die. There's this whole, like, I don't know if they're just trying to be edgy, but there's ones that they'll call on those, like, to be their pagans and or to be their pagans. They are pagans. To be their patrons, or they'll call on, like, there's the horse in Celtic mythology that basically wants to kill you. There's certain, like, deities and certain, like, mythological figures that basically just seek destruction and death and destruction. And they're calling on them to, like, give them power, or to be their patron and their person and their deity. And I'm like, it's like using a Ouija board, mama. You got to be careful who you let in, and you got to know who you're asking and what you're asking for. I will leave it at that. That's why the sigils and things like that, the only time I've ever been very concerned about anything, and I'll tell you this for sure, because I've been practicing for a long time and I know what I'm doing. But so pentagrams and things like that do not rattle me in places. Like, when I go into places, or if I go into an abandoned location that has, like, ooh, there's pentagrams painted on the walls and upside down crosses and 666. I'm like, yeah, and, like, this is somebody trying to be edgy and extreme and doesn't know what they're doing. They're trying to be provocative, and they're putting up things that they know will get a reaction from people. The only time I have ever been concerned, and if Jason is still here, he will tell you, was when they were at Cleanwater Demon House and there were sigils on the walls, because that is somebody asking for something very specific, and that is somebody who knows what they're asking for. And I was like, as soon as I saw the sigil and I looked at it and I looked into it, I was like, nope. I said, you guys need to not go back to that house without protection. Nope, I don't like that. I don't like the energy coming off of that. You guys need to not go back there without protection, because somebody knew what they were asking for. This isn't somebody just being a joker and painting 666 on things. This is somebody who knew what they were trying to summon. And maybe they summoned it. We don't know. So, just throwing that out there. Witch Mountain. I'm not familiar with that. I'm familiar with the Gates of Hell in Antioch, California, which is also very creepy. It supposedly has, like, weird creatures and other things. It's a portal to hell, I guess, or something like that, in Northern California. But I did not know about the place. I know about Whaley House, which is unfortunately closed. I was trying to get in there to investigate. Witch Mountain, I will have to look into that. But yeah, it was like, pentagrams don't rattle me, obviously. Even upside down ones don't rattle me. Again, it's usually people just being provocative because they know that's associated with Satanism. They know that's associated with left-hand magic and black magic. So it might not even be practitioners putting it up. It's just people like, oh, I'm gonna get a rise out of people by putting, like, an upside down cross on things. Like, okay, that's fine, whatever. You know. But sigils, I was like, oh, I don't like that. What? Because I even screen capped it and looked at it, and I was like, I don't know. Nope, you guys need to not go back there without protection. And I literally, like, sent, like, the next day, I sent protective spray. I was like, if you guys are going back there, you're not going back without this. Because somebody asked for something to show up. And it may have, because that place has definitely a hostile energy to it, for sure. And even outside, like they've had weird things happen outside, almost like kind of like skinwalker kind of incidents where they've seen like there's been weird circles and things in the dirt, and like the branches are bent down, and I know Patrick's even said he's seen or heard like weird sounds outside. So I'm like, dude, I don't know what they opened something a doorway to, but they didn't know how to close it. Or yeah, it was on a live. He was outside the house, and there was like a area outside of the house where it was like almost like a circle had been cleared for something, and the branches were like bent over, and he'd seen like a figure that was like a tall figure by like the trees and stuff. And I was like, yeah, you need to not go out there. I said, and I said, if you hear something say your name, leave. Or if you hear something that sounds like crying, leave. Don't go look for what it is. Like if you see a person or hear crying sounds or hear your name being called, do not go finding what that is. Don't go out there. Get in your car and go home, and don't go back there. Yep. It's usually a Wendigo. It's a Wendigo that's saying your name, and it'll sound like a person, and it will attack you. It's luring you in. It's calling you to try to get you to come look for it, or it'll sound like a lost person. Especially if you're out in the wilderness. Now, if you're out in the forest and things like that, if you hear like somebody crying, or if you hear somebody shouting, calling your name specifically, it's possibly a Wendigo. Yeah. A shapeshifter, a skinwalker, and they will attack you. They mean business. They're not nice entities. Please look them up. Do not fuck with them. They eat people. So, no. Yeah, that I literally got on and told him, I said, if you hear anything saying your name, if you hear anything like calling out to you saying, I need help, or it says your name specifically, I said, you need to leave immediately. Like I said, you probably need to leave now, actually, since you found the thing and you've seen something. It probably is better that you go, which I think he did leave shortly after that. But I was like, dude, who knows what was summoned out there, but there is something out there that's not a friendly being, for sure. I was like, you need to leave. I said, or I'm coming up there and fighting a Wendigo. I don't know what's going to happen here this evening. I'm drinking 6 5-hour energies. I am driving 8 hours to Reno, and I'm punching a Wendigo in the face. Like, because we got beef now. The Witch's Tower in San Diego. Okay, I'll look it up. Yeah, San Diego's got some really cool history. There's a lot of cool places in San Diego in general, as far as historical places like Balboa Park and stuff like that. But I'll definitely look that place up for sure. Yeah, it was definitely, because I was like, I texted him, I was like, you need to let me know when you get home immediately, because no, this is something you don't mess with. And when I get serious about something, you guys have seen me, I don't get rattled by stuff, and he doesn't really either. But I was like, you need to go now. Like, I'm not even playing anymore. Like, when I get serious about something, I'm like, it's serious. I don't scare easily, and I don't leave and run from places. But if I'm like, you need to go, you guys should probably take that seriously. Yeah. Otherwise, punching a Wendigo in the face. It'll eat me, but I'm going down swinging. You guys. But yeah, look up Wendigos and Skinwalkers. They're not nice. They're kind of like, I guess they count as cryptids. People have seen them, or they're definitely Native American in belief system. So that's why people are like, oh, people are just gatekeeping by telling you not to call on them and not to worship them. I'm like, no, they're telling you not to call on them and worship them because it's a dangerous entity. It would be like calling on a shark and expecting it not to bite you. Like, Yeah, it's like that'd be like calling a bear and going, "It bit me and it ripped my face off." Well, you called a bear, motherfucker. What did you think was gonna happen? Like, A plus B equals C. Weird. Yeah. Native Americans won't even talk, like, there's certain things that, like, you can't whistle after midnight, and I think that's a skinwalker thing where it calls them. There's like, because I've seen them on like TikTok, and I've seen them on like some Native American like videos and stuff like that, where they talk about, it's like still a superstitious where it's like you don't whistle after midnight, like you don't whistle because it calls something evil. Yeah, don't call out what you can't put back, boo boo. Don't open a door if you don't know how to shut said door, which is the problem with Ouija boards. If you don't know what you're doing and you're just fooling around with it, you can't then complain when bad shit happens, because if you open a portal to something and you invite things in, you better be able to control whatever comes through that portal, or you better know how to be able to shut that door. Simple rule. Hello. This got off topic, and I've been talking for 2 hours, so I'm sorry, you guys. Oh yeah, baby witch is praying to them. Like, yeah, my head. Like, seriously, I went, y'all need Jesus, and I'm a heathen, so that's a big ask for me to say that. Like, that is a big ask for me to say you need Jesus. I've been talking for almost 2 hours, so thank you guys for entertaining my little rant for 2 hours. I guess I should probably let you go and stop talking, because I'm talking too much. I don't know. If you guys want me to keep talking, I'll keep talking. I have no problem talking. I talk a lot. Or that's another angle. If you guys are interested in like witchy questions or things like that, like, I will gladly answer questions about practitioner questions, that sort of thing. Like, if you guys have, questions about witchery or mythology or things like that, because I do a lot of mythological research and stuff like that, and lots of different questions about, like, oh, is it okay to burn sage, or oh, is it okay to do this, or like, oh, what should I do for this? I've done a lot of different. I'm eclectic witch, so I kind of pull from all different schools of magic. So I don't have like one, like, I'm not Wiccan. I don't follow like one path. I have like, I pull from like basically kind of whatever it calls to me, I use in my practice. Oh yeah, like, they're fascinating. So I'll tell you guys briefly kind of how I found my patrons. So my patrons, and not everybody has to have patrons either. That's like, I'm very like flexible when it comes to like witch practice and like magic ship and that sort of thing, because everyone's experience is different. Like, everyone is called to witchcraft in a different way, and everyone is there for a different reason, and no one's experience is the same. So I'm very like open with people, if people want to practice different things or try different things that are not maybe traditional to their ethnicity, or their, like, if you're Hispanic in descent and you want to practice Norse paganism, go for it. Like, have at it. Like, just because you're not of that ethnic background, I don't think that necessarily means that you should be shut off from something. I don't gatekeep sort of things. I'm very open with that, all of that, which not everybody is, but that's totally fine. That's just how I am about things. And I can't tell what people, it's the whole reason I'm not a Christian. I'm not going to tell you how to be a witch. You don't tell me how to be a witch. I don't tell you how to be a witch. Everything's fine. But my patrons, which not everybody has patrons that they pray to or that they offer stuff to, are Egyptian. Egypt was always a thing for me, which I could never explain. It's more than likely a past life experience that I've had before, because ever since I was a little kid, like younger than I should have been interested in it, I was fascinated with ancient Egypt. I was fascinated with the pyramids. I had a hieroglyphic stamp set, you guys, that I would write letters and hieroglyphics in when I was like 12. So like my parents bought me this little, like for Christmas, they bought me this like from a museum, this like stamp set of hieroglyphics. And I would seriously, legitly write hieroglyphic letters to people and give them to them. That, like, why? As a 12-year-old kid, why would I be interested in that? So there was obviously something about ancient Egypt that always kind of like called to, like, the call to the soul sort of thing. So when the Luxor Casino opened out here, we don't have museums in Vegas traditionally like major cities do, where they have like these cool museums with lots of cool like ancient artifacts like New York does or LA does. We don't have museums here. Oh yeah, that's Nyx on my bed. She's the inky void that demands food and chicken. And she's now taking a bath. So we don't have museums here. So the closest thing I had was the Luxor Casino when it opened. So I was immediately fascinated, because that hit me around that time when I was like all about ancient Egypt and all about that. And I was just over the moon because it was Egyptian themed. And I remember going when it first opened, and I was just like eyes this big, and like I was all about it. And I went into the gift shop, and there was something that just like made sense. Like I was drawn to this object. And it was a little, and I actually have it on my altar. I will get it. Oh my God, my chair was stuck. It's actually right here on my altar. So it was this. This was in the gift shop at the Luxor, and it's made in Egypt. And all I knew was I had to have it. Like I couldn't explain it. Like I could not explain. And I was like 13, maybe 12, 13. And I had to have this. So I bought it. And I didn't know at the time what it meant. I was a kid. I had no idea about, I knew some of the ancient Egypt mythology. I was not familiar with this deity in particular, though. I was familiar with the major ones. I was familiar with like Ra, with Isis, with Thoth, like, some of the other, like the big ones. I was not familiar with this one, but for some reason I had to have this. Well, this is, as some of you may be familiar, is Bastet, or Bast, the Egyptian goddess of fertility. She's a fertility. She's a defense goddess. She's a lot of things. She wears a lot of hats, as most Egyptian deities do. They wear a lot of hats. She also was an escort to for the dead souls to the underworld. So she would escort souls crossing over. Was one of her duties. And she just I just had to have her. She's also a goddess of cats. She's represented by a cat head on a person's body, or a cat. So she was my patron before. So I bought that before I even knew anything about being a witch. I was not anything like that at the time. Flash forward, 30 years, and I'm, an adult, and I'm a practicing witch, and I'm a practicing pagan, and I still have it. I've kept it all these years, which, I mean, that's a miraculous thing as is. I've moved, multiple times, and I've kept this from my parents' house. I've kept this. So she ends up on my, I was like, well, I'm looking for deities. Like, I have this and it makes sense to me, but I don't know if it's going to be her. So I was out shopping, and I was at Home Goods or something looking for pillows, something stupid, when I was moving in. And I was still seeking my patrons. I was still questioning, and I wasn't sure. And I was in line, and I was waiting to check out. This is a Home Goods, mind you. This is like a Ross for like home decoration stuff. This is like Target. So it has like basics, like home decor stuff in it. Nothing ancient, nothing anything, nothing. I'm standing in line, and I go, in my head, not out loud, because, people will think I'm crazier than I actually am. I'm asking for a sign. I'm like, I need a sign to determine whether or not this is going to be my patron. And I shit you not, guys. I look down, I'm waiting in line to check out, and I come across, I look down, and stuck in a random spot in the checkout line, like somebody had abandoned it there, is this. There is nothing else ancient Egyptian in that store. This was just sitting on a shelf in front of me. And I had the little bowl, and I have my offerings in it. So I keep my offerings in there, but it's like a little oil lamp. With Bast on it, you guys. It was pretty freaking on the nose. So I was like, okay, duly noted. Cool. Thank you for answering my question very directly. And so then I was looking for a male patron because, you know, I collect patrons like Pokemon, apparently. And I was like, well, I have my female patron, you know, the god and goddess thing. And I was still kind of dabbling in Wicca sort of ish at the time. So I was like wanting to do the god and goddess thing, which I was like, all right, if there's another deity that is a male deity that wants to reach out to me. And again, this was the time I was just like, I was again out shopping. I don't know why this happens to me when I'm shopping. It was at Goodwill of all places, which you guys have been to Goodwill's thrift stores. They have random eclectic just arrays of stuff. No rhyme or reason to anything that's in there. And I was in my head again, I was like, if there are any deities that like, give me a sign, give me a sign. I'm walking up and down the aisles of this Goodwill, and I see this. What the fuck, you guys? That's Anubis. The god of mummification, god of death, the guide of the dead. I see this jar sitting on a shelf with nothing else Egyptian around it. It's pretty obvious, I think. He holds my herbs now. That is what he does. So he is my other patron. So it's funny that you were like, my husband got an Anubis tattoo. And I'm like, Anubis is my other patron. That's really funny. So Bastet and Anubis are my patrons currently. It's not like I don't have others. I do work with other ones, but they're my like primary ones for sure. That I ask for guidance most of the time. Not that I don't reach out to other pantheons and reach out to other deities when I need them, because, you know, you want to limit yourself. But I was like, that's pretty direct. That was a pretty direct answer. That'd been like if I'd have walked around the corner and there'd just been like a giant Fenris statue carved out of wood. I'd have been like, duly noted. All right, load it in the car. It's going home with me. Aw, your 22-year-old kitty died. Aw. My apartment allows pets, but they only think I have one. I think I have one. One of them's on the bed. That is Nick's. The other two are making noise over there. And like, I think Luna's out in the other room. But yeah. I've always been drawn to cats too, so like ancient Egypt cats. Makes sense. Celtic, yeah. Celtic Pantheon's cool too. Like they've got some badass stuff in the Celtic Pantheon. The Norse Pantheon's cool. I have a friend who's a practicing male witch, and his patrons are he's recently like been drawn to Ares in the Greek Pantheon and Keranos in the Celtic Pantheon. So basically Lord of the Wild Hunt and God of War. I'm like, you are so alpha male, it's not even funny. Like, I was like, all right, that's a little on point, but that's okay. I was like, okay. So he is definitely one that mixes Pantheon. So I'm like, dude, whatever, that's cool. Like, you know, Why limit yourself to one aisle in the store when you have the whole store available, is my thing on that, you know. To Norse, some Greek. Yeah, just that'd be like going shopping at a grocery store and only shopping in one aisle. Why would you do that when there's a whole store around you to pick from? Just because, and the thing is, just because you have something in your mind too, like you'll be maybe drawn to something, or you're like, oh, I think it would be this, and then you'll get approached by the most unexpected deity. You're like, really? Like, where did you come from? Like, I would never have thought. And then they're like, nope, knock, knock, bitch, here I am. You wanted help. And you're like, I didn't expect it to be you. Cool. Awesome. Do you want me to go? Because I can just go. Hi, Piper. Piper June. Oh my gosh. And here's the cranky one. It's like, speaking of deities, this one. Hi, honey. She hates me right now. This is Piper. You guys have probably seen her before, but this is Piper. She's the sassiest one in the house, as you can see by this little angry face. Don't you dare. Don't you dare do it. As you can see by this little angry face. She's very mad. She's very mad. She's very mad at me. Okay. Yeah, you're going to climb. You're going to scratch me. Go ahead. Please leave before you bite me, because that's what's going to happen. It didn't amplify in unexpected ways. I can see that, especially like Greek and Norse gods they're very potent and powerful. Yeah, she was like, human, stop touching me. Stop. I did not give you permission to do this, so please let me down. Please let me go and leave me alone. I'm surprised she didn't bite me, actually. She like whipped around at first, like she was ready to square up and like, I'm going to sink my teeth right into your face. And like, please don't, kitty. I love you. I feed you. Why do you do this to me? Aw. Yeah, she's my little sassy tortoiseshell. She definitely has tortitude, that's for sure. 2 long-haired ones and 2 short-haired ones. But yeah, if that's something you guys ever want me to cover as well, like I will gladly cover like oils, herb work, hex work, because I actually do hex work. I know a lot of witches don't, but I do. So I have one of my friends is like, she's like, yeah, I'm the one that like heals and blesses people. She's like, when they need dark stuff done, I just send them to you. And I was like, yep, we're basically 2 sides of the same coin. Like, you're the one that bandages him up and I'm the one that puts him in the hospital. Done and done. We keep each other in business. So if you ever have questions about any kind of like black magic, spell work, hexes, curses, things like that, I can answer those as well. Wasn't something I used to do, but it's something that I've kind of opened my view on, because a lot of like, yeah, you have to have balance. That is primarily what my belief in magic is these days. It used to be very love and light only. And that is to me, in my personal opinion, is kind of a toxic way to deny people that their anger and their emotions. People should be able to feel angry and bad sometimes, and you don't make them feel ashamed for feeling that way. The universe only works when it's in balance. You have to have 2 sides of the same coin. You have to have yin and yang. You have to have light and dark. One can't exist without the other. So to walk a center path is the most balanced path, honestly, in magic, in anything, truly. That's about as philosophical as I'll get on y'all tonight. How could you tell if somebody put black magic on you? Well, there's a pretty traditional, I know, like brujeria kind of thing where you put an egg in water. You take a glass of water and you take an egg, an uncooked egg, and you rub it on yourself, like all over. And you crack it in the water and see if it starts making, if it starts foaming or making weird shapes. That's how, generally, like with brujeria and hex, they can tell if you've been hexed or something. Pro tip. or if you find anything around your house, like if you find like a little doll or a jar of spices or something, or a little sachet of like a sealed thing, an envelope. If you find anything like that, or a dead animal, unfortunately, if you find like a dead like fish or a dead snake, that sort of thing. Yeah, Hispanics do that to see if somebody give you the evil eye. So there's traditional ways to find out that sort of thing, but that's one of the ways. So pro tip, you can try it at home. Try it and see if anyone's put the evil eye on you. So you take, the whole egg. So you take a whole uncooked egg and you're going to rub it like up and down your arms, across your chest, over your head, up and down your legs, and then across your midsection, across your body, like pretty much all over. You just take the whole egg in your fingers like this and just rub it all over. And then you crack it in water. And if it makes weird shapes or foams up or bubbles or does anything strange, somebody has put like an evil eye or a hex on you. Pro tip. And Javi says it works. Daniel says his grandmother used to use the egg for evil eye. Yep. That is a traditional brujeria technique. Yeah, so or if you find anything, if it's a voodoo hex, you'll find things around your house. You might find, like I said, wax jars. You might find dolls. You might find like an envelope with spices or dust in it or something like that. People will leave things on your doorstep or leave things around your car. Those are tend to be more direct, like stay away from my man kind of things, hexes, like bones sometimes in there. But if you're not finding stuff like that, then you can always do the egg test to find out. You can buy voodoo dolls from the toy section on Amazon, which is disturbing. And you know what's even funnier, guys? I'll tell you this little gem before I leave. I've always had a yen to go to New Orleans because I do some voodoo practice, some of it. I don't do all of it, but I use some elements of voodoo in my practice. So I've always been fascinated with New Orleans and that whole thing. And my aunt had gone years and years and years ago, and this is before I was a practitioner. Is the clear water next to you or under your bed real as well? I've heard that one. I have not done that one, but I've heard that one is a way to tell also. But I have not personally tried it. I have heard of it. But you can buy voodoo dolls you can buy voodoo dolls anywhere. As a matter of fact, voodoo doll fun time story. My aunt went years ago to New Orleans on a vacation. And they did all the tourist stuff. They did all the things that you do in New Orleans, blah, blah, blah. She brings home, and this is before I was practicing anything, before I was doing any kind of witchcraft or anything like that. She brings my mom a souvenir, and it's a doll. And I, meanwhile, at this time, knew not really much about any kind of voodoo practice or anything like that. And my mom shows me this doll that her sister bought for her in New Orleans. And she goes, "Oh, isn't it cute?" It was this little, handmade, cloth wrapped, doll. And I inexplicably, because I can't tell you why I did this. I still to this day can't tell you why I did this. I turned it over to the back and I reached down and I pulled a straight pin out of it. And I went, "Yeah, it's a real cute doll, Mom." She goes, and her eyes huge. And I was just like, she goes, "How did you know that was there?" And I went, "I don't know how I knew that was there. But here, do you want this back now?" And she's like, "Not really." I was like, "We can keep it without the pin." I was like, "Just throw the pin away." I said, "It doesn't necessarily have to mean it's you." I was like, later on, I was like, "God damn it, I wish I would have kept that voodoo doll." Because it was a real legit New Orleans voodoo doll. She might still have it. I wonder if she still has it. I don't know. I'll have to ask her. I'm going to find out. If I find out, I'll show it to you guys on another live stream. I can't explain how I knew that was there. I just like, it was in one motion. She hands me the doll. I go, turn it over, pull the pin out. She's, how'd you, I don't know. You can take it back now. Please take it from me. So yeah, it was, that's why I kind of hope she still has it, honestly. For real. Because I will take it. I'll be like, I'm going to take this from you. This is totally going to be mine now. And woe to anybody who pisses me off. Seriously. So those are the real ones. Like, this was definitely like a real, like, handmade, not just bought off of Amazon doll, for sure. Oh, Crow popped in for a little bit, and he's like, it was sounded really serious, and I didn't want to distract anybody. So he's like, I popped in but didn't say anything. It was probably one of my very serious things about a serial killer I was talking about. I don't know. But yep. So we'll do this again next week. So please join next week on our normal Bat Time and Bat channel for Haunted History Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. We're going to visit 6 more haunted locations. And I'm going to go over the history, and we'll have a little slideshow to go with them. Do you guys enjoy the slideshows? They don't take me that long. And they're not as long as I would like, but it's a work in progress. I feel like putting a visual to some of these locations, even if they are very famous ones, putting like visuals to that helps, I think. It helps you kind of like, oh, that's what that looks like. Oh, okay, cool. Or those are those people. Oh, putting a face to the name. Sweet. So yeah, so 6 o'clock next week, we're going to do Haunted History. Like I said, when the holidays are over, when the holiday season is done, we'll probably get back into the interviews. It's just hard to pin people down this time of year, to be honest with you, because people have a lot going on during this time of year. So we'll be back with the interviews in January with a couple new guests that you guys have not seen yet. So I'm excited to do that, and then to start the Murder Corner as well, since you guys are all about true crime, and I didn't know that, and I'm glad I know that now. So thank you guys for joining. Sorry it's been 2 hours. But hey, it's 2020, and it's like, we might all get quarantined again. I don't know. And it's a Saturday night, so why not? Here we are. Might as well enjoy it, right? So enjoy your week. I hope you guys have a good week, and I will see you again on Wednesday. And until then, stay spooky, everybody.